So when we have an equation, something like this we had, we know how to solve that by using the square root property. That was in 9.1. But the problem is they don't always give it to us in that form. So what we're going to learn how to do is what we call completing a square. And it's a big idea. It's very powerful. We can do all kinds of things with it. We're going to use it in chapter 9 to solve quadratic equations. Okay, so the idea is, what could I put right here? What number, what real number could I put there in that blank so that it would make a perfect square trinomial? Well, if you think back to how we were doing problems, when we used the binomial squares pattern, we would want, like, now we're trying to work it backwards, so we would want those to be like 3x and 3x. But remember, this would be the a, well, this would be the a, and this would be the b. And so that 3 would be the b. So we want b squared here, so we want 3 squared, which is 9. Now, so to complete the square, we need a 9 here. That means if I have x squared plus 6x plus 9, that's a perfect square trinomial, and it factors into x plus 3 squared. So when we were completing the square, we're adding in the 9. Okay, we're finding what that is. Now, how do you do that? You take the coefficient of the x term, or, the y term, whatever it is. It's just to the first power, though, the variable. You take that number, and you divide it by 2 and square it. Okay, so let me give you the form for an expression like this. They would write it like this: x squared plus bx plus c. So they want you to take the b, they want you to take half of it, divide it by 2, or multiply by 1/2, and then they want you to square it. So in our example, the b was 6, so they want you to take 6 and divide it by 2, and then square it. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, 3 squared is 9, and so 9 was like the magic number that was going to make it a perfect square trinomial. All right. So that's the idea of completing the square. So now they have some examples for us. So we're looking for a number. By the way, you're always going to add that number in because it'll always be positive because you're squaring it. We want a number that can go in that blank that will make it a perfect square trinomial. So we're going to complete the square to make a perfect square trinomial. So take the minus 20, divide it by 2, and square it. Well, negative 20 divided by 2 is negative 10. Square it, that's 100. So 100, that is completing the square. Now it says write the result as a binomial squared. So now we have a squared minus 20a plus 100. And how do we write that? It's going to be a minus, and the number that you found is the b, okay? So it's minus 10. Another way you could think of it is, what's the square root of 100? 10. Okay, and that will work. You can do the smiley face thing to check it. You could say a squared, double that, so negative 20a, and then square this, and you get the 100. This is just checking it. So this is the answer they want when it says write the result as a binomial square. Okay, it's always the same 2 steps. Take half of it and square it. Okay? All right. So here we have another one, b. m squared minus 5m. Well, this time it's a minus 5. We're going to divide it by 2 and square it. Now it's a fraction. I'm sorry about that, but it is. When we square it, we're going to get 25. Whoops. We're going to get 25 over 4. So to complete the square, it's m squared minus 5m plus 25 over 4. Now, how do we write that as a binomial squared? So it's going to be m, it's going to be minus, and then it's the number in there, or the square root of 25 over 4. But it's probably easier to do that thing in parentheses. So 5 over 2 squared. And then that's the answer right there. Okay? All right, so, and some of these are a little tricky, but that's okay. Now we have p squared plus 1/4 p, and we're trying to find the number that's supposed to go right there to make it a perfect square trinomial. So you take the b, the 1/4. Now how are you going to divide that by 2? You're going to multiply it by 1/2. It's already a fraction. So multiplying by 1/2 and dividing by 2 is the same thing. Then we have to square it, okay? So you get on the parenthesis part 1/8 squared, or 1/64. Okay, so that's the special number. You'd write p squared plus 1/4 p plus 1/64. Now, how do I write it as a binomial squared? I write p plus, and then it's going to be that number in the parentheses, the 1/8, and squared. Okay? All right, so we're going to do more of these. They won't all be a bunch of fraction work, but we'll do more of them in the next video. Let me just say, we didn't solve anything here. We were just changing the form of the expression. They weren't equations. Okay, so